Have you sat in a meeting, surrounded by voices yet felt apart? Have you ever sat in a meeting, perhaps one of those long, sprawling ones, where ideas are tossed around like beach balls, or even a much more informal gathering like a pub quiz with colleagues, a noisy birthday party, or a boisterous family reunion, surrounded by a cacophony of voices, laughter, and animated conversations, yet felt a strange, almost intangible distance? It's as if there's an invisible pane of glass between you and everyone else, muffling the sounds slightly, softening the edges of their faces, making you feel like an observer in your own life, rather than a full, immersed participant. You're physically present, your body occupies a chair, your eyes follow the speakers, but your mind, your very essence, feels subtly dislocated, watching the scene unfold from a slight remove. I remember this feeling with particular clarity from a specific holiday party at work a few years back. The office had been transformed for the festive season. Twinkling fairy lights were draped haphazardly over cubicle walls. Festive music thumped a little too loudly through portable speakers, competing with the buzz of 100 conversations, and the air was thick with the scent of lukewarm mulled wine, stale beer, and the faint, sugary aroma of slightly burnt mince pies. Everyone was in full swing, singing off-key to Mariah Carey classics, shouting good-natured jokes across crowded tables, and raising glasses with a boisterous camaraderie that seemed to flow effortlessly from them. Colleagues who usually exchanged polite nods by the coffee machine were now locked in animated debates, gesticulating wildly, their faces flushed with cheer. I was there, of course. I had made the conscious effort to attend, feeling the subtle nudge of expectation that accompanies such optional but highly encouraged events. Externally, I was doing all the right things. I smiled. I clapped along when the music hit a particularly catchy beat. I even joined in a verse or two of a carol when prompted by a particularly enthusiastic team leader. I made sure to circulate, exchanging pleasantries and offering seasonal greetings, trying to blend seamlessly into the festive tapestry. But inside, beneath the surface of my polite smiles and occasional nods, I felt profoundly disconnected. It wasn't sadness or anger or even boredom, though a touch of the latter might have been present. It was just a quiet, persistent sense of being apart, observing the spectacle unfold as if from behind that clear, sound-dampening glass. The collective energy of the crowd, which seemed to lift everyone else into a state of effervescent joy, felt like a tide that swept over me, but never quite managed to pull me into its current. I was adrift in the midst of it all. In those moments, and countless others like them throughout my life, at loud university freshers events, at sprawling family gatherings, or even during particularly animated brainstorming sessions at work where everyone seemed to feed off the collective energy, I would often find myself scrutinizing the faces around me. I'd try to decipher the secret to their apparent ease, their genuine immersion in the collective joy. Why did it feel so natural for them, so exhilarating, and so much like a performance for me? Why couldn't I just let go and lose myself in the moment like everyone else seemed to? Back then, this recurring feeling, which manifested in various social settings, made me deeply uncomfortable. I thought something was inherently, irrevocably wrong with me. I'd cycle through self-recrimination and self-diagnosis. Am I not social enough? Am I too reserved? Am I just odd? Do I just not get how to truly belong, how to be a part of things? There was this pervasive cultural narrative, subtle yet incredibly powerful, constantly echoing from media, popular culture, and even well-meaning advice, that to be a well-adjusted, successful adult, especially in a professional setting, you had to be an extrovert, a joiner, a natural networker, someone who thrived on the energy of the group, who could effortlessly work a room and forge connections with ease. And because I didn't feel that intrinsic pull, because my natural inclination was often towards quiet observation, focused work, and deeper, more singular connections, I quietly carried a persistent sense of inadequacy, a low hum of anxiety about my social aptitude. I felt like I was constantly failing to live up to an unwritten social code. Of course, I tried to push through it. I forced myself to attend more events, to initiate small talk, to feign a level of enthusiasm I didn't genuinely feel. I'd stand in the bustling kitchen at a friend's party, making conversation with someone I barely knew, feeling my internal battery rapidly draining, only to return home utterly exhausted, often more depleted than after a demanding day of solving complex coding problems under pressure. The sheer effort to bridge that invisible gap, to pretend I was just another bee in the perpetually buzzing hive, was immensely tiring, sometimes leaving me with a lingering sense of inauthenticity. It was a pattern that repeated itself through various stages of life. School dances that felt like alien rituals, university common rooms where I sought refuge in a book, countless work socials, and even some extended family gatherings where the sheer volume of chatter felt overwhelming. Each time, that feeling of being an outsider looking in would resurface, sometimes stronger, sometimes milder. But always there, a quiet, persistent companion in my internal landscape. For years, I just accepted it as an inherent flaw in my personality, something to be managed, to be hidden, or ideally, to be overcome. I thought it was my problem, a deficiency to be rectified. Then, almost by chance, I stumbled upon a book called The Gift of Not Belonging. I picked it up on a whim, perhaps drawn by the intriguing title that seemed to offer a counter-narrative to my lifelong struggle. A glimmer of hope that perhaps my problem wasn't a problem at all. As I started reading, it was like a light turning on in a dimly lit room, illuminating a space I hadn't realized was so dark. Kaminsky, the author, articulated this very experience, this particular way of navigating the world, and gave it a name that instantly resonated: Otroverts. The term itself felt like a gentle embrace, a recognition that this wasn't a defect, a social failing, or a sign of some inherent brokenness, but rather a distinct and perfectly valid orientation to social interaction. It offered a lens through which I could finally understand those countless holiday parties, those meetings where I felt apart, not as personal failures of my own making, but as inherent aspects of how I am wired. The relief was palpable, a physical sensation, the kind that settles deep in your chest when a long-held unspoken worry finally finds a voice, and, crucially, a validation. It wasn't about being broken. It was about being different, and perhaps about learning to appreciate the unique perspective and strengths that difference could actually offer. That word, Otrovert, became a key, unlocking a new understanding of myself and my place in the world. Part 2. Understanding Otroverts, a different kind of freedom. Rami Kaminsky, the author of The Gift of Not Belonging, doesn't just coin a term. He paints a vivid and deeply reassuring picture of what it means to be an Otrovert, a description that genuinely resonated with my own lived experience and likely will with many of you listening. He describes Otroverts not as the aloof, cold, or socially awkward individuals that society often mistakenly labels those who don't fit in, but rather as people who are perfectly capable of being warm, genuinely social, and perhaps most importantly, deeply connected, especially on a one-on-one basis. This distinction is crucial, as it fundamentally challenges the common misconception that a preference for solitude or a lack of enthusiasm for large group activities equates to a deficit in social capability or a desire for isolation. Think of it this way. It's not that an Otrovert cannot participate in a large group, or that they are inherently shy or introverted in the traditional sense, where energy is explicitly drawn from alone time and depleted by social interaction. Instead, it's that they often don't feel that intrinsic, almost magnetic pull towards the group, the collective, the communal sense of belonging that seems to drive so many others. Their energy and their sense of fulfillment don't typically come from being part of a bustling crowd, from the loud, surface-level exchanges that often characterize large gatherings. For an Otrovert, that kind of environment tends to be more draining than nourishing. What truly energizes and fulfills them are more focused, often intimate interactions, where they can engage with genuine depth and authenticity. For me, this manifests in the vast difference between enduring a large, boisterous office party, much like the one I described in the opening, where I feel like I'm performing a role, constantly scanning, trying to find an appropriate place to stand or a topic of small talk, and having a quiet, intense conversation over a coffee with a colleague about a complex technical problem. Or the profound satisfaction I derive from a deep philosophical discussion with my wife on a Sunday afternoon. Or an hour spent fully immersed in building an elaborate Lego set with my son. One drains me, leaving me feeling hollowed out and wishing for solitude. The others energize, fulfill, and deeply connect me. It's about the quality of the engagement, not the sheer number of people involved. Kaminsky is careful to differentiate this from loneliness, a crucial distinction that often gets muddled in our group-centric world. Otroverts aren't necessarily isolated. They simply find meaning and connection in different forms of interaction that cater to their inherent preferences for depth and substance. Kaminsky's central message, which felt like a massive weight lifted off my shoulders when I first read it, is disarmingly simple, yet profoundly liberating. Not belonging isn't a flaw, it's a form of freedom. This isn't just a clever turn of phrase. It's a fundamental reorientation of perspective that can profoundly alter how we perceive ourselves and our place in the world. For so long, I, like many others, had internalized the idea that if you weren't constantly seeking to integrate, to be part of the in-group, to be seen and acknowledged within a collective, then you were somehow deficient. Society, through various channels, often subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, pushes this narrative. We see it in school, where being popular often means being part of a clique or a prominent social circle. In college, where participation in social clubs, fraternities, and sororities is lauded, and especially in the professional workplace, where terms like team player, great cultural fit, and strong networker often translate to someone who enthusiastically participates in every optional happy hour, company picnic, and networking event. To not feel that pull, or to even actively prefer a different mode of engagement, has long been tacitly, if not overtly, pathologized. We're often branded as shy, difficult, aloof, or even unfriendly, simply for having a different social operating system. But Kaminsky flips this on its head. He posits that when you cease to chase that external validation from the group, when you step off the treadmill of trying to fit in where you don't naturally belong, you unlock a profound sense of personal liberation. This is where the Stoic lens perfectly aligns with Kaminsky's insights, offering a powerful philosophical framework for understanding and embracing this freedom. The Stoics, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, consistently emphasized the paramount importance of distinguishing between what is within our control and what is external to us. Other people's opinions, their expectations, their definitions of normal or belonging, their approval or disapproval, these are all firmly in the realm of externals, entirely beyond our direct control. Trying to manipulate or force these externals to align with our desires is, as Epictetus often taught, a fool's errand that only leads to frustration, anxiety, and unhappiness. What is within our control, however, is our own judgment, our own values, our own internal state, our reactions, and our choices. By reframing not belonging as freedom, Kaminsky is essentially encouraging us to align with this fundamental Stoic principle, to release the futile struggle of controlling external perceptions and social outcomes. Instead, he invites us to focus on cultivating our inner citadel, as Marcus Aurelius described it, our own authentic sense of self, fortified by reason and virtue, and unperturbed by the shifting winds of external opinion. When you stop expending energy on trying to be someone you're not for the sake of group acceptance, or to meet an expectation that doesn't genuinely resonate with you, you suddenly find a vast reservoir of mental and emotional energy freed up. This liberated energy, previously spent on performance and anxiety, can then be consciously directed towards what truly matters to you, towards living according to your own rhythm and meaning. For me, in my world of IT, this translates to spending less time at superficial industry mixers, where the connections feel transactional and shallow, and more time delving into a challenging coding problem that requires deep focus, or dedicating truly present, undivided moments to my family. It means understanding that my professional worth isn't dictated by the number of social events I attend or how seamlessly I can network a room. Instead, my worth comes from the quality of my work, the depth of my relationships with those I choose to connect with, and the integrity of my actions. The freedom Kaminsky speaks of is the freedom to define success and happiness on your own terms, to find contentment and purpose in your own pace, and to cultivate a life that is genuinely meaningful to you, rather than constantly striving to meet external benchmarks that don't truly resonate with who you are. It's the freedom to choose deep, focused work over performative collaboration, to choose meaningful one-on-one connections over superficial group interactions, and to choose quiet, restorative reflection over constant external stimulation. It's about recognizing that trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit leads not just to exhaustion and inauthenticity, but also to a perpetual state of inner conflict. Conversely, embracing your natural inclination leads to a more fulfilling and genuinely meaningful life. It's the freedom to be, without apology, the person you are, to thrive in your own unique way, and to discover that sometimes the greatest sense of belonging comes not from being part of a crowd, but from being deeply at home with yourself, confident in your own internal compass, and unswayed by the need for external validation. Part 3. Insight 1. Deep connections, not crowds. One of Kaminsky's most comforting and frankly liberating insights is this, that not belonging as an Otrovert absolutely does not equate to loneliness. This is a crucial distinction because so much of our societal conditioning equates not fitting neatly into a group with being isolated, problematic, or somehow socially deficient. The common narrative, subtly reinforced everywhere, from popular culture to well-meaning advice, suggests that if you're not constantly surrounded by a lively crowd, if you're not perpetually out and about, you must be missing something fundamental, or worse, that something is inherently wrong with you. We're taught from a young age that popularity and seamless integration into various social circles are paramount, and anything less is often perceived as a cause for concern, both by others and, tragically, by ourselves. Kaminsky, however, beautifully explains that Otroverts, far from being isolated, actually often cultivate some of the most authentic and deep one-on-one relationships. This is precisely because they aren't driven by the need for superficial group approval or the constant performance required in larger social settings. They aren't chasing quantity of connections. They are relentlessly seeking quality, depth, and genuine resonance in their interactions. For them, a handful of truly meaningful relationships are infinitely more fulfilling than a sprawling network of acquaintances with whom they share only surface-level pleasantries. This perspective really hit home for me and immediately brought to mind the timeless wisdom of the old Stoics. Seneca, that sharp-witted Roman philosopher and statesman, once warned us about the danger of constantly chasing after superficial social engagements and endless distractions. He argued, with his characteristic bluntness, that wasting our precious time and energy in these fleeting, often empty interactions only serves to deaden the soul. What does it mean for the soul to be deadened? For me, it evokes a sense of spiritual depletion, a dulling of one's inner light, a gradual erosion of the capacity for deep thought, authentic feeling, and genuine presence. It's like a battery slowly running flat, not with a sudden jolt, but with a persistent, almost imperceptible drain on your vital energy. You become less vibrant, less truly alive, constantly reacting to external stimuli rather than generating from within. I've certainly found that to be profoundly true in my own life, especially as I navigate the demands of a busy work schedule in IT, the beautiful chaos of a young family, and my own persistent need for quiet reflection and meaningful engagement. The relentless buzz of constant collaboration, the pressure to always be on in open-plan offices, the stream of notifications, and the expectation of instant responsiveness can, left unchecked, create that very deadening effect. Take, for instance, a simple quiet walk with my wife on a Sunday morning. There are no grand plans, no agenda beyond a slow stroll through the local park, perhaps hands intertwined, where we can actually talk, truly listen to each other, and connect without the background noise of obligation or expectation. Sometimes we discuss the week's events, sometimes we delve into deeper thoughts about life or our future, and sometimes, perhaps most powerfully, we simply walk in comfortable silence, a profound sense of shared presence and understanding flowing between us without the need for words. It's in these moments, often punctuated by easy laughter or thoughtful contemplation, that our connection deepens, where real understanding and empathy are fostered, where the emotional fabric of our relationship is woven tighter. This is genuine connection, built on a foundation of presence and mutual respect, free from the need to impress or perform. Or consider an afternoon spent down on the living room floor, meticulously building an elaborate Lego castle or a complex spaceship with my son. The intense focus required for those tiny plastic bricks, the shared laughter over a misplaced piece, The quiet concentration as we puzzle through the instructions, the palpable sense of co-creation and shared imagination. These moments, though small and seemingly unremarkable from the outside, feel infinitely more connecting and fulfilling than, say, attending a large, bustling industry conference. At such conferences, while potentially useful, I'm expected to network with dozens of people, make polite small talk, and somehow remember a flurry of names and job titles while maintaining a perpetually engaged expression. The energy exchange is fundamentally different. In the Lego session, energy flows freely and joyfully between us, building something tangible and strengthening our bond. At the conference, energy is constantly being expended and often without a genuine return. There's a qualitative difference, isn't there, between these experiences? In those deep, one-on-one interactions, whether with a partner, a child, or a truly close friend, the walls come down effortlessly. There's a directness, a mutual vulnerability that allows for real emotional and intellectual exchange. You're not performing, you're simply being. You can show up as your authentic self without fear of judgment. In contrast, the mental and emotional energy required for large group interactions, especially when you're not naturally inclined towards them, is immense. It's an act of constant scanning, code switching, and projecting an agreeable persona. You're always a little bit on, a little bit guarded, always calibrating your response to the perceived expectations of the group. It's not that these events are inherently bad or without purpose. Some networking is necessary, and celebrating with colleagues can be genuinely enjoyable for many. But for someone like me, an Otrovert, they are often devoid of true, resonant meaning and leave me feeling utterly depleted rather than recharged. It's a deficit model of social interaction for my brain, rather than a surplus. Understanding this distinction, this subtle yet profound difference between superficial group belonging and genuine deep connection, has been immensely empowering. It's given me permission to consciously choose how I spend my social energy, to prioritize depth over superficial breadth. It means recognizing that my preference for quiet, focused connection isn't a deficiency to be fixed or a social failing to be overcome, but rather an intrinsic characteristic to be understood, respected, and even leveraged. When I embrace this, I'm not only happier and less exhausted, but I also find that the connections I do make are stronger, more resilient, and far more meaningful. It's about being true to my internal compass, rather than succumbing to the external pressure to conform to a social ideal that simply isn't me. Ultimately, Kaminsky's point, beautifully echoed by the Stoics, is that true connection comes from genuine engagement, from a meeting of minds and hearts, and that this is often best fostered not in the clamor and performance of the crowd, but in the focused individual interactions that Otroverts instinctively seek. It's about finding meaning and connection in your way, not society's prescribed way, and realizing that in that authentic pursuit, you are far from alone. In fact, by embracing your unique wiring, you become capable of cultivating truly profound bonds that others, constantly seeking the next big gathering, might actually miss. The quiet walk, the focused play, the deep conversation, these are not lesser forms of social interaction. For the Otrovert, they are the very essence of it, the true antidotes to the deadening of the soul that Seneca warned against. They are the moments that truly nourish and sustain us. Part 4. The draining pressure of conformity. Building on the idea of finding true, resonant connection in our own way, Kaminsky also makes a profoundly insightful and, for many of us, incredibly validating point about how much of our world is fundamentally structured to reward those who join in. This isn't just a casual observation. It's a deep critique of the often invisible biases embedded in our social and professional ecosystems. Think about it. From the earliest days of school, with those ubiquitous plays well with others comments on report cards, the emphasis on group projects, and the praise lavished on the most outgoing children, the message is clear. Integration is paramount. This continues through higher education, where participation in social clubs, fraternities, and sororities is often celebrated as a key part of the college experience, and networking events are pushed as essential for future career success. And then we land in the corporate world. Here, the prevailing cultural narrative constantly champions group participation, seamless team synergy, and visible social engagement. We're encouraged to be networkers, to be visible, to thrive in open-plan offices designed for constant interaction, to enthusiastically participate in every team-building exercise, optional happy hour, and company retreat. The lexicon itself reinforces this. Culture fit, collaborative spirit, social capital, visible leadership. The system, in many subtle and not so subtle ways, is designed for the joiners, for those who naturally draw energy from collective activity and external validation. They are the ones whose natural inclination aligns with the institutional rewards, making their path feel smoother, their progress often more visible. But for Otroverts, Kaminsky argues, it's precisely this relentless, often unspoken pressure to conform and participate in ways that don't align with their natural disposition that exhausts them, not their inherent nature. It's not that we lack the capacity to engage or even enjoy social interaction. It's that the constant expectation to be on in group settings, to maintain a persona that may not align with our authentic self, is a profound drain on our mental and emotional resources. It's like trying to run a high-performance application on the wrong operating system. It can technically work, but it's inefficient, sluggish, and ultimately unsustainable over the long term. The energy required to constantly monitor social cues, to engage in small talk that feels unfulfilling, and to project an image of effortless sociability is immense. This constant effort to bridge the gap between our internal preference for depth and quiet observation and the external demand for breadth and boisterous participation is the source of immense fatigue. It can manifest as that inexplicable tiredness after a crowded event, even if you felt you performed well, or the quiet dread that builds up before a mandatory feeling social gathering, knowing the energy cost it will exact. This struggle often makes us feel like we're constantly falling short, like there's a secret social language everyone else speaks fluently, but we're only ever fumbling with a phrasebook. This pervasive pressure and the internal struggle it creates immediately brought to mind the profound wisdom of Epictetus, the Roman Stoic philosopher. He gave us the incredibly powerful framework of the dichotomy of control, reminding us that the world is neatly divided into two categories, things that are within our control and things that are not. Our own judgments, our intentions, our thoughts, our desires, our aversions, and our actions. These are within our sphere of influence. But the opinions of others, their approval or disapproval, external events like the weather or the outcome of a game, other people's choices, and indeed the expectations of society, these are entirely outside our direct control. Epictetus would tell us, don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, and then you will find happiness. To strive to control that which is external, he argued, is a source of endless frustration, anxiety, and unhappiness, because it's a battle you are fundamentally destined to lose. In the context of the Otrovert struggle, this Stoic principle offers a truly liberating perspective. The approval of the group, the perceived need to belong in a way that feels unnatural, the social capital gained or lost from attending an event, these are all firmly in the realm of externals. It's not within our control how others perceive our level of participation, or whether they label us hard to get to know or too quiet. We cannot force others to understand or appreciate our unique social wiring. What is within our control, however, is our own judgment about whether to engage in those draining activities, and our own inner peace, regardless of external opinion. This Stoic clarity empowers the Otrovert. It gives us explicit permission to detach from the anxiety of external judgment, to anchor ourselves instead in our internal compass, and to make choices based on our own well-being and genuine priorities, rather than societal dictates. I've tested this principle countless times in my own life, especially in my professional career in IT. There have been many occasions where the unspoken yet palpable expectation to attend a networking event after work, a big team social, or a client dinner felt overwhelming. The internal monologue would be intense. If I don't go, will I be seen as uncommitted? Will I miss out on a crucial connection or a promotion opportunity? Will my boss think I'm not a team player or not engaged enough? The fear of these perceived negative consequences, the anxiety of potential social or professional repercussions, often felt far more potent and paralyzing than the actual discomfort of attending the event itself. It was a battle waged entirely within my own mind, amplified by my fear of what others might think. But then, armed with the insights from Kaminsky's book and the Stoic clarity of Epictetus, I started to experiment, to consciously apply that dichotomy of control. I began saying no to some of those obligations, not defiantly, but discerningly and politely. Instead of forcing myself to attend an evening event I dreaded, I chose to spend that time differently. Sometimes, it meant spending the evening quietly reading a book I'd been wanting to dive into, allowing my mind to engage deeply and on its own terms. Other times, it was simply having a genuinely quiet, focused dinner at home with my family, being truly present with my wife and son. It meant carving out time for a hobby, like tinkering with a personal coding project, or simply decompressing in silence. And what happened? Remarkably, nothing. Absolutely nothing fell apart. The world, much to my initial surprise, continued to spin on its axis. My career didn't suddenly derail. My colleagues didn't ostracize me, at least not overtly or in any noticeable way. And the sky certainly didn't fall. In fact, more often than not, the only thing that did happen was that I slept better. I woke up feeling more rested, more genuinely recharged, and with a clearer head for the actual work that needed doing. The imagined repercussions, the anxieties I had built up in my mind about missing out or being judged, were almost always far more severe and pervasive than the actual gentle reality. My energy was preserved, and my peace of mind was intact. This realization was incredibly liberating. It taught me that much of the pressure we feel to conform is often self-imposed, an internal amplification of external expectations that are not nearly as rigid or as judgmental as we perceive them to be. The mental energy we expend chasing external approval or trying to fit into a mold that doesn't feel authentic is a finite resource. And when we redirect that energy towards cultivating our internal world, towards deep work, meaningful one-on-one connections, and genuine rest, we not only become more effective and fulfilled individuals, but we also live more authentically. This isn't about being defiant or isolationist. It's about being discerning. It's about applying a stoic filter to our social calendar, asking ourselves, is this truly within my sphere of control and virtuous intent, or am I bending to an external pressure that will only deplete me without true benefit? The answer often reveals that the quiet choice, the choice to nourish our unique nature, is not just permissible, but profoundly beneficial, both for ourselves and for the quality of the contributions we can genuinely make when we are rested and authentic. The freedom to simply sleep better, to feel more genuinely connected to myself and my closest circle, was a far greater reward than any fleeting social approval I might have gained by forcing myself into a performance. Part 5. The Power of Independent Thought. One of the most empowering takeaways, and truly a gift from Kaminsky's book, is the profound idea that being free from groupthink actually bestows upon Otroverts a unique and often undervalued strength. This isn't just about being different for difference's sake. It's about being strategically positioned for insight, critical analysis, and genuine innovation. Without the constant, sometimes suffocating, pressure to align with the crowd, to parrot the prevailing opinion, or to simply go along to get along out of a desire for harmony or fear of rocking the boat, we're often able to approach situations with strikingly fresh eyes. We become adept at questioning assumptions that everyone else might take for granted, simply because they've always been the way things are done, or because everyone knows this is how it works. Groupthink, as we all know, is a powerful force in any collective setting, from a small project team to a large corporation, or even within society at large. It's that psychological phenomenon where the desire for conformity in a group overrides a realistic appraisal of alternative courses of action. It stems from a very human need to belong, to avoid conflict, and to feel secure within a consensus. Often, the loudest voice, the most charismatic leader, or simply the most established opinion quickly becomes the default. Not necessarily because it's the best or most thoroughly vetted, but because it's easier to simply agree. Challenging the consensus can feel risky, requiring social capital and a willingness to stand out. But an Otrovert who doesn't feel that intrinsic pull towards collective conformity who isn't primarily driven by the need for external validation from the group, is often inherently less susceptible to these social biases. They aren't trying to fit in, so their perspective is less biased by what others think or expect them to say. This allows for a kind of detached observation, a mental agility that comes from not being emotionally entangled in the group's prevailing narrative. Kaminsky illustrates this point beautifully with his own experiences, sharing how he was able to develop a groundbreaking second chance hospital program. I don't have all the specifics of the program, but the essence of his story is powerful. He managed to achieve this precisely because he stepped back, observed the existing systems and patient pathways, and wasn't afraid to challenge the ingrained beliefs and traditional methods that others within the institution had come to accept as immutable truths. Where others saw how it's always been done, or the limits of what's possible, Kaminsky saw potential for improvement. Precisely because his mind wasn't locked into the group's established modes of thinking. He looked at the problem from an independent vantage point, unburdened by the very groupthink that can often stifle creativity and genuine progress in any organization. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes the most innovative solutions emerge from those who aren't afraid to think outside the collective box, even if that box is invisible to everyone else. This profound independence, this ability to find clarity through a kind of internal self-sufficiency, immediately reminded me vividly of something Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his Meditations. He observed, "A man needs nothing but philosophy, for the universe is already complete." Now, at first glance, that might sound a bit grand, perhaps even aloof or overly abstract. But its essence, for me, is deeply practical and resonates perfectly with Kaminsky's point about the Otrovert's strength. What Aurelius was getting at, I think, is that the fundamental truths, the answers to life's most pressing challenges, and indeed, a sense of deep contentment and purpose, don't reside out there in external validation, in the clamor of popular opinion, or in the latest trends and collective anxieties. Instead, they are accessible within us through careful thought, rational inquiry, introspection, and an understanding of our place in the natural order of things. The completeness of the universe suggests that the raw material for understanding and problem-solving is always present. What's needed is a clear, unclouded mind, cultivated through philosophy, which, for the Stoics, was a way of life, a system of thought and practice, not just academic study, to perceive it. It's about realizing that the scaffolding of wisdom, the tools for navigating life, are internal, not external, and that we have everything we truly need within our own rational faculties. For me, in my world of deadlines, complex systems, and intricate problem-solving, that feeling of pure, uncluttered clarity, that sense that the universe is complete and the solution is right there if I can just see it, often comes when I'm deep into coding late at night. There's a particular magic to those hours after everyone else in the house is asleep. The house is quiet, save for the gentle hum of the server in the study. The kids are tucked in, the ping of incoming emails has mercifully ceased, and the day's constant barrage of small talk, team stand-ups, unexpected interruptions, and the general background noise of collaboration tools has finally subsided. In that serene, unadulterated silence, with nothing but my screen, my thoughts, and the rhythmic tap of keys, solutions to intricate problems that felt intractable, stubbornly resistant to a clear path during the day, suddenly become obvious. It's not magic, of course. It's the absence of all that other stuff. The mental noise, the groupthink of the day, the constant processing of social cues, the underlying pressure to respond quickly. All of that cognitive load has finally dissipated. This allows my brain to connect the dots in a way it simply couldn't when constantly processing external stimuli and navigating social expectations. It's like clearing all the unnecessary apps and processes from your computer's memory, suddenly allowing the core programs to run with maximum efficiency. The code, which minutes before was a tangled mess of logic and potential bugs, resolves itself into elegant, efficient patterns. An architectural problem that seemed to have no clear path forward suddenly snaps into focus, revealing a simple, robust solution. This isn't just a personal preference for working late. It's a testament to the power of independent thought and deep work, a concept championed by modern thinkers like Cal Newport, who argue that focused, uninterrupted concentration is becoming increasingly rare and valuable in our hyper-connected world. Otroverts, by their very nature, are often instinctively drawn to these periods of deep work, even if they've never heard the term. They thrive in environments where they can engage with a task deeply, without external pressure or constant interruption. And this inherent inclination, often misunderstood as being antisocial or uncollaborative in a group-centric culture, is precisely their superpower. This ability to see things independently, to cultivate a rich inner life, and to find solutions in quiet contemplation, free from the constant need for external affirmation, is a profound strength. It's what allows us to navigate the complexities of modern life, from professional challenges to parenting decisions, with a stronger internal compass. We're less susceptible to fads, less swayed by popular opinion, and more grounded in our own values and reasoned judgments. We don't need the collective roar to find our truth. Sometimes, the quiet hum of our own mind, meticulously working through a problem, is not just enough, but precisely what's required. It's in that space of quiet contemplation and independent thought that true wisdom often resides. And it's a gift that Otroverts inherently possess, if only we learn to recognize and embrace it. And paradoxically, by cultivating this inner clarity, we often contribute more authentically and powerfully to the hive when we do choose to engage. Part 6, a quiet reflection, contributing in our own way. Building directly on that thought of independent contribution, that clarity found in quiet spaces, Marcus Aurelius also penned a line that has always resonated deeply with me, offering a powerful counterpoint to any lingering guilt or self-doubt about not always being a conventional joiner. He wrote, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." It's a statement that, on the surface, might seem to contradict the idea of individual freedom and difference that we've been exploring. After all, if the hive, the collective, is paramount, doesn't that imply we must conform to its ways, subsume our individuality for the greater good? But when you truly unpack it, especially through the lens of Kaminsky's insights into the Otrovert, it's actually a profound affirmation of our unique modes of contribution. Aurelius, like all Stoics, understood our inherent interconnectedness, our social nature as human beings, and our duty to the larger human community, our hive. We aren't meant to be isolated islands, entirely self-sufficient in a literal sense. But his wisdom doesn't dictate how we must contribute, only that our actions should ultimately serve the greater good, and in doing so, serve our own good. The critical understanding here is that a healthy hive is comprised of healthy, well-functioning, and authentically contributing bees, each playing their part in a way that aligns with their nature and strengths. A bee forced into a role that drains it, or expected to mimic the behavior of others at the expense of its own well-being, ultimately diminishes the hive, rather than strengthening it. This is where the Otrovert's unique rhythm, their specific mode of operating, becomes not just permissible, but incredibly valuable. Even if we don't belong in the usual, boisterous, outwardly communal ways, we absolutely can, and do, still contribute through our own rhythm, our own work, and our own kind of care. Let me explain what I mean by each of these, drawing from my own experiences in the often demanding worlds of IT and family life. Firstly, through our own rhythm. Modern life, especially in the corporate world, often feels like a relentless, high-speed train with an unspoken expectation that everyone is sprinting at the same pace, constantly on and immediately responsive. The workday can be a continuous stream of instant messages, impromptu meetings, collaborative documents, and the general clamor of an open-plan office. For an Otrovert, this collective, fast-paced rhythm can be incredibly draining, pushing against our natural inclination towards periods of deeper thought, sustained focus, and less frantic social engagement. It's like trying to force a deep-sea diver to continuously sprint on a track. Their strengths lie in a different environment and pace. But embracing our own rhythm doesn't mean opting out entirely or becoming an uncooperative lone wolf. It means strategically choosing when and how to engage, and fiercely protecting the necessary space for focused, generative work. For example, in my IT role, there are always demands for quick responses, spontaneous troubleshooting, and the constant hum of collaboration tools. While I participate in these and value the team, I've learned to carve out specific blocks of time, often early in the morning before the office truly comes alive, or late in the afternoon when things start to quiet down, or even during lunch breaks if I can find a quiet spot where I can truly dive into complex problem solving, architectural design, or system optimization without interruption. It's in these self-directed deep work periods, operating at my natural pace, that I often produce my best, most innovative, and most robust solutions. This isn't visible team bonding or boisterous brainstorming, but it's a vital foundational contribution to the hive, my team, my company, because it ensures the system runs smoothly, that critical bugs are squashed efficiently, and that the underlying architecture is sound and scalable. The hive ultimately benefits far more from the well-rested, focused bee, delivering high-quality, stable solutions, than from the perpetually buzzing, exhausted one, whose contributions might be more visible, but potentially less impactful or sustainable. It's an application of Stoic self-awareness, understanding my own energy patterns and managing my time accordingly, rather than simply reacting to external demands. Secondly, through our own work. As Kaminsky highlighted with his example of building a groundbreaking hospital program by questioning established norms, and as I touched on with my late-night coding clarity, the independent perspective of an Otrovert often translates into a distinct quality of work. When you're not constantly trying to impress a crowd or get swept up in groupthink, you have a clearer, less cluttered channel to your own critical faculties and creativity. This allows for a meticulousness, a depth of analysis, and sometimes an out-of-the-box thinking that can be hard to achieve in a highly collaborative, fast-paced group setting where speed of response is often prioritized over depth of thought. For me, this means taking the time to really understand the root cause of an issue, rather than just patching symptoms. It might involve spending extra hours, not because I'm mandated to, but because I know that the elegance, efficiency, and robustness of a well-crafted solution will ultimately benefit everyone down the line, preventing future headaches and technical debt. It's the kind of quiet, often unsung contribution that might not generate immediate applause in a team meeting, but underpins the reliable functioning of the entire operation. It's contributing a solid foundational brick to the hive, ensuring its structural integrity, rather than just adding a splash of decorative paint to the exterior. The hive needs both, of course, but often only celebrates the latter, overlooking the crucial, quiet work that keeps everything from falling apart. The Stoic emphasis on aright, on striving for excellence in one's craft and fulfilling one's duties with integrity, aligns perfectly here. My work is not just a means to an end. It's an opportunity to apply reason and skill, and to contribute something of true value, judged by my own internal standards of quality, not solely by external metrics or accolades. And finally, through our own kind of care. This circles back to Kaminsky's initial insight about the depth and authenticity of one-on-one relationships. Our contributions aren't limited to professional output. They extend fundamentally to how we nurture our immediate circle, our personal mini hive of family and close friends. While I might not be the life of every party, or the person who organizes grand social events, I strive to be the husband who is truly present during our conversations, who listens without distraction, offering genuine empathy and thoughtful feedback, rather than formulating my next point. I aim to be the father who commits fully to an hour of playtime, building Legos or reading stories, rather than half-heartedly engaging while mentally elsewhere, distracted by a buzzing phone or lingering work thoughts. These acts of focused, intentional care, this own kind of care, are profound contributions. They build the emotional resilience of my family, create a stable and loving environment for my son to grow, and strengthen the bonds that truly matter. These aren't flashy contributions, rarely seen or applauded by the wider world, but they are the bedrock of a well-functioning personal hive, without which the professional hive would also suffer significantly. A stressed, disconnected bee, whose inner life is in disarray, cannot contribute effectively or sustainably to the larger hive, no matter how much it tries to buzz or how many meetings it attends. The Stoic practice of fulfilling our roles and duties, as a husband, father, colleague, with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, is powerfully expressed in these quiet acts of focused care. So when Aurelius says, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee," it's not a rigid command to conform at all costs or to lose oneself in the collective. Instead, I see it as a nuanced invitation to discern what truly nourishes both the individual and the collective, recognizing that these two are inextricably linked. For an Otrovert, that often means recognizing that their most valuable, sustainable contributions come from embracing their unique nature, from working at their own authentic rhythm, focusing on deep, meaningful work, and nurturing genuine, profound connections in ways that recharge rather than deplete. It's about understanding that a well-regulated, self-aware bee, one that honors its own specific needs and strengths, is ultimately a much more vital and sustainable contributor to the health and prosperity of the entire hive. Our unconventional belonging is not a detriment. It's a different, equally valid, and often essential way of enriching the world around us. It's about finding our unique hum within the larger symphony, recognizing that silence and space are just as crucial as the most vibrant notes in creating a harmonious and resilient whole. Part 7. Practical Extension. Choosing Meaningful Connections. So, with all these insights from Kaminsky's The Gift of Not Belonging, coupled with the timeless wisdom of the Stoics, the understanding that true connection doesn't equate to large crowds, that external pressure can be a profound drain, and that independent thought is a powerful asset, we arrive at a really practical point, a kind of gentle suggestion for navigating our busy lives. If you often find yourself drained, perhaps even depleted, by what feels like forced socializing, by those obligations that don't quite resonate with your inner self, then it might be profoundly worth pausing to ask yourself a crucial question. This isn't about shunning all social interaction, far from it, but rather about a discerning self-inquiry. Is this particular engagement a true responsibility, something genuinely essential that aligns with your values and duties, or is it primarily just group pressure, an unspoken expectation that you feel compelled to meet? Let's unpack that a little, because the distinction can be subtle, yet it holds immense power in how we manage our energy, our time, and our mental well-being. A true responsibility often carries with it a sense of genuine purpose and intrinsic value. For instance, attending a crucial work meeting where your input is genuinely needed, where your expertise will shape a project's direction, or where your presence is critical for a team decision. These are moments where your contribution is specific, impactful, and often irreplaceable. Similarly, being present for a significant family event like a child's school play, a parent's milestone birthday, or a partner's important career celebration, these are situations where your support, your shared presence, and your love are vital. These responsibilities are rooted in our roles, our relationships, and our genuine desire to contribute to the well-being of our hive, as Marcus Aurelius might put it. Fulfilling them often brings its own deep sense of satisfaction, even if they require effort or navigate some discomfort, because they align with our core values and duties. There's an inherent sense of authenticity to them. But then there's the other side, group pressure. This category encompasses a vast array of social demands that, while often framed as optional or enjoyable, carry a heavy weight of unspoken expectation. These are the after-work drinks that stretch on endlessly, where the conversation feels more like noise than connection. They are the large industry mixers, where you exchange dozens of business cards and superficial pleasantries, but no real, memorable conversation ever takes root. They might even be the constant, low-level social chatter at the school gate or the neighborhood barbecue that, despite the pleasant smiles, leaves you feeling more empty and drained than connected. These are the moments that, for an Otrovert, can feel less like genuine interaction and more like a performance, a prolonged act of trying to fit in, to appear normal or sociable. And they often leave us utterly spent, wondering where all our energy went. The pressure to attend these events can be immense, driven by a subtle fear of missing out, FOMO, the worry that something important will happen without you, or that you'll be overlooked. More often, it's a deeper, more primal fear of being judged for not participating. We worry about appearing aloof or uncommitted or not team-spirited at work. We fret about being seen as unfriendly or difficult within our social circles. And that worry itself, That internal rumination about external perception can be more exhausting than the event itself. It's the pre-event anxiety, the mental dress rehearsal, that often depletes us before we even step through the door. This is precisely where the Stoic principle of focusing on what's within your control becomes an invaluable compass. Epictetus, with his unflinching clarity, would remind us that the opinions of others, their judgment of our choices, their approval or disapproval of our social patterns, these are all firmly external to us. You cannot control how others perceive your absence from a party or what assumptions they might make about your level of sociability. That is their task, their judgment, and therefore it is outside your sphere of influence. To attach your peace of mind to such externals is to build your house on sand, constantly vulnerable to the winds of fleeting opinion. But you can control your own response, your own choices about how to allocate your precious energy and time. You can choose to detach from the anxiety of external judgment and anchor yourself instead in your internal compass, in what truly serves your well-being and your deeper purpose. Imagine this scenario, one I've lived countless times. You've had a long, mentally taxing week in IT. Deadlines were tight. Your brain feels like it's been running a marathon, and you're looking forward to a quiet evening of decompression. Then, the invitation for a Friday night work social pops up, an optional but highly encouraged team-building event. Historically, your default might have been to grimace, sigh, and grudgingly commit, spending the hours leading up to it filled with a low-grade dread. You'd go, put on a brave face, make small talk, feel your energy seeping away, and come home more tired than when you left, often feeling a sense of inauthenticity. Now, armed with the understanding of what truly nourishes you, you pause, you apply that Stoic filter. You ask, is my attendance here a true responsibility that will genuinely benefit my work, my team, or a specific relationship in a way only my physical presence can provide? Or is it predominantly a social expectation driven by group pressure that will primarily deplete me without offering genuine connection or contribution? More often than not, for an Otrovert, the honest answer points to the latter. So, instead of forcing yourself, sometimes the most authentic and beneficial choice, both for you and for the quality of your future interactions, when you do choose to engage, is simply to stay home. And what happens when you do? You might choose to dive into a book you've been meaning to read, perhaps one that explores deep philosophical ideas, or a fictional world that transports you, allowing your mind to truly unwind and engage on its own terms, free from interruption. This isn't just passive entertainment. It's an active form of self-care, a way to replenish your mental well, to nurture that inner life Marcus Aurelius spoke of. The quiet act of reading, for an Otrovert, can be as restorative as sleep. Or perhaps you spend that quiet evening talking deeply with one person, your partner, a close friend, or an older child. These are the conversations, as Kaminsky points out, that truly connect. They're not about maintaining appearances or making polite small talk. They're about sharing genuine thoughts, vulnerabilities, and insights. These one-on-one connections, unburdened by the noise and demands of a crowd, offer a sense of intimacy and understanding that is often far more real, far more nourishing than any party could ever hope to provide. The quality of connection in these focused moments often far surpasses the quantity of interactions in a crowded room. Think about how many times you've left a large gathering feeling oddly empty despite being surrounded by people. Compare that to the feeling of leaving a really good, deep conversation where you feel truly seen, truly heard, and truly understood. The difference is profound, an emotional and spiritual refilling rather than draining. This isn't about becoming a hermit or withdrawing from the world entirely. It's about intentionality. It's about recognizing that our social energy is a finite resource, and just like any other precious resource, it needs to be managed wisely. When we spend it indiscriminately on activities that drain us and provide little genuine connection or personal value, we deplete ourselves, leaving less in the tank for the people and pursuits that truly matter. But when we invest it discerningly in activities that recharge us, that foster deep engagement on our own terms, we build resilience, cultivate more authentic relationships, and paradoxically, have more to give when it truly matters and where our contributions are genuinely appreciated. It's a strategic withdrawal, if you will, that allows for greater, more impactful contribution in the long run. So, next time that internal debate flares up, that subtle pressure to join in makes itself felt, remember to pause. Ask that critical question. Is this a true responsibility or merely group pressure? Give yourself permission to choose the path that truly aligns with your authentic self and nourishes your soul, even if it means politely declining an invitation and embracing the quiet power of your own space. You might just find that the joy of missing out, or JOMO, as some call it, is not just a trend, but a profoundly fulfilling and genuinely liberating experience, allowing you to live more lightly and more truly. Part 8. Insights for Authentic Living. If any of this conversation about Otroverts, about finding your own rhythm in a world that often demands a collective hum, and about the quiet power of not always belonging in the conventional sense, has resonated with you, then I've got a couple of other reads you might find not just enjoyable, but genuinely empowering. These are books that, in their own ways, echo and amplify the liberating message we've discussed from Kaminsky, and certainly align with a Stoic perspective on living authentically, with an internal locus of control. They offer different lenses, but all point to a similar truth, that peace and effectiveness often come from understanding and honoring your true nature, rather than constantly striving to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. First up, a book that's practically a classic in this vein, Susan Cain's Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. Now, while the gift of not belonging speaks to Otroverts, a term that might encompass more than just traditional introversion, as it focuses more on the pull to the group rather than just social energy, there's a massive overlap in the experiences described. Cain's work was groundbreaking for so many, myself included, because it meticulously dissects how our modern Western culture has become so profoundly extroverted, placing immense value on assertiveness, charisma, and constant outward social engagement. From primary school onwards, we're taught to speak up, to be team players, to network, to collaborate loudly. The extrovert ideal, as Cain calls it, permeates almost every aspect of our lives, often subtly signaling that quietness or a preference for solitude is a weakness, something to be overcome or hidden. Reading Quiet was another one of those profound aha moments for me, very similar to discovering Kaminsky's concept of the Otrovert. It wasn't just about understanding myself better. It was about validating my very existence and appreciating my intrinsic preferences. Cain helped me see that my tendency to observe more than participate in large groups, my need for significant blocks of uninterrupted time for deep work, and my preference for fewer but more meaningful interactions wasn't a personal failing. Instead, it was a distinct and valuable way of processing the world, a different operating system, if you will, that comes with its own set of powerful advantages. She highlighted how the strengths of introverts, their capacity for deep thought, careful planning, sustained focus, active listening, and a more deliberate approach to problems, are often overlooked in the clamor of our extroverted culture. This is precisely where the Stoic connection truly shines. Much like Epictetus urging us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is external, and Marcus Aurelius emphasizing the cultivation of our inner citadel, our robust, self-sufficient inner life. Cain's work reinforces the idea that our internal landscape, our way of engaging with our own thoughts and processing information, is a profound and inexhaustible source of strength. It's about aligning with one's physis, one's natural constitution, rather than fighting against it. For the Stoics, living in accordance with nature was paramount, and part of that is recognizing and leveraging your own inherent temperament. Cain helps us reframe that internal desire for solitude, not as a retreat from the world, but as a strategic engagement with it, a necessary period of internal calibration and replenishment that allows for more effective, thoughtful, and meaningful outward action. For someone in IT, constantly solving complex puzzles, the value of uninterrupted concentration and independent problem solving, which Cain champions, is immediately obvious. An open-plan office, designed for constant chatter and spontaneous collaboration, can feel like a constant drain. But a quiet hour alone with a difficult piece of code can yield breakthroughs that no amount of loud brainstorming could achieve. It's not just a preference, it's a productivity superpower, often overlooked by those who equate visible busyness and constant interaction with genuine progress. So, if Kaminsky's definition of an Otrovert made you nod your head, quiet will likely provide even more robust empirical and anecdotal evidence for the power of your quieter, more thoughtful inclinations and give you permission to lean into them. The second book I'd point you towards is a bit different in its philosophical approach, but profoundly aligned with the core message of finding freedom by shedding the need for external validation. The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. This book, framed as a captivating dialogue between a philosopher and a youth, introduces us to the powerful principles of Adlerian psychology. Its central tenet, and one that resonates deeply with Stoic thought, is the idea of the separation of tasks. The authors argue that much of our unhappiness stems from trying to meddle in other people's tasks, specifically, trying to control how others perceive us, how they react to us, or whether they approve of our choices. The book brilliantly states that your task, your sole responsibility, is to live your life authentically, in accordance with your own values and reason, to choose how you want to be. The task of others is to decide how they feel about that. And critically, you have no control over their task. They are free to like you, dislike you, approve or disapprove, and their judgment is their own business, not yours. This concept felt like a bolt of lightning for me, a direct and incredibly practical application of Epictetus's dichotomy of control. For years, I, like many people juggling work, family, and social circles, worried endlessly about whether a particular decision at work would be popular with my boss, or if a parenting choice I made for my son would be met with approval from wider relatives, or even just what my neighbors might think about my garden. The mental energy expended on these external concerns was immense, creating a constant, low-level hum of anxiety. It was like constantly carrying a mental clipboard, tallying invisible social scores. The Courage to be Disliked encourages you to consciously, almost defiantly, let go of that burden. It's not about being inconsiderate or ignoring constructive feedback. It's about releasing the suffering that comes from trying to control the uncontrollable, from seeking validation where it cannot truly be found. It emphasizes that true freedom and peace come when you realize you don't need to chase external recognition, popularity, or approval to be confident in your own decisions or to feel worthy. Your worth is inherent, not granted by others. The book suggests that living authentically, courageously defining your own path, even if it means being disliked by some who prefer you to conform, is the true path to a fulfilling and truly liberated life. The very title of the book is a call to Stoic courage, the courage to act rightly even if it incurs external disapproval, to prioritize your integrity over popular opinion. This ties back beautifully to Kaminsky's freedom of not belonging. If you're not constantly trying to fit into a group, to be the joiner that society often expects, you're already practicing a form of the separation of tasks. You're implicitly choosing to live according to your own internal compass, allowing others to have their opinions and judgments without letting those opinions dictate your inner state or your actions. It empowers you to make choices based on your own reasoned judgment and values, rather than being swayed by the fickle winds of popular opinion or social pressure, which are, as we've discussed, precisely what drain the Otrovert. Whether it's navigating a challenging feedback session at work, where you need to stand firm on a technical decision you believe is correct based on your expertise, even if it's unpopular with a client or manager. Or making a parenting choice, like limiting screen time, that goes against the grain of what everyone else is doing in your social circle. Or even simply dedicating time to a personal passion that your friends might not get. The principle of separating tasks provides a powerful anchor. It frees up incredible mental bandwidth, allowing you to focus on what truly matters, your intentions, your actions, and your genuine contribution, rather than the often unpredictable and ultimately uncontrollable responses of the external world. You become the author of your own life, rather than a character in someone else's script. Both Quiet and The Courage to be Disliked offer powerful companions to Kaminsky's insights in The Gift of Not Belonging, providing different angles, but ultimately reinforcing the same profound Stoic message that true strength, peace, and freedom come from understanding and embracing your authentic self, cultivating your inner world, and releasing the incessant, self-imposed burden of needing external approval. They equip you with the mental frameworks to navigate an often extroverted, opinionated world with greater serenity and purposeful action. Part 9. Margin Note. The Start of Freedom. Ultimately, what I took away most from Rami Kaminsky's The Gift of Not Belonging, and what feels like the truest, most portable wisdom from our entire discussion, can be distilled into a single, profound sentence, a margin note to carry with you, etched into the quiet spaces of your mind. Freedom truly begins the moment you stop seeking validation from others. This isn't just a catchy phrase or a convenient summary. It's the very bedrock upon which an Otrovert, and indeed anyone seeking a more authentic, less anxiety-ridden life, can build genuine contentment, purpose, and a resilient sense of self. It's a message that deeply resonates with the core tenets of Stoicism, which consistently directs our attention inward towards what is truly within our control, and away from the turbulent, often unpredictable currents of external opinion and approval. Think back to Epictetus, the former slave who tirelessly taught his students that our peace is shattered not by external events themselves, but by our judgments about them, and crucially, by our desperate attempts to control things entirely outside our sphere of influence. The approval, the praise, the simple acknowledgement, or even the basic understanding of others, these all fall squarely into that category of externals. We can influence them, certainly, through our virtuous actions and character, but we can never truly control them. When we tie our sense of self-worth, our daily happiness, or our professional confidence to the shifting, fickle sands of others' opinions, we are, in effect, handing over the keys to our inner tranquility. We become hostages to their whims, their moods, their biases, and their often unexamined expectations. This is the struggle Kaminsky illuminated so clearly for me and for so many who identify as Otroverts. For years, my discomfort at social gatherings, my feeling of being an observer behind glass during those work holiday parties, stemmed directly from an unconscious yet powerful seeking of validation. I wanted to feel like I belonged, to be seen as a good team player, a sociable friend, someone who fit in. The exhausting effort I described in trying to force myself into a conventional group mold wasn't for my own intrinsic joy or genuine connection. It was primarily for the imagined approval of others. And in that relentless pursuit, I was constantly sacrificing my own precious energy, compromising my own authentic self, and ultimately, unwittingly forfeiting my own freedom. That self-imposed burden was far heavier than any external expectation. When Kaminsky's book gave me the language to understand that not belonging isn't a flaw, but a distinct, valid mode of being, it was the first, crucial step towards truly internalizing this profound margin note. It gave me explicit permission to see that my natural rhythm, my preference for depth over breadth in connection, my inclination towards quiet contemplation and deep work wasn't something to be fixed, a social deficiency to be overcome. That newfound self-acceptance then allowed me to start the vital work of consciously decoupling my inner state, my sense of worth, and my peace of mind from external approval. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reminds himself of the self-sufficiency of reason, the idea that a virtuous life, lived in accordance with nature and reason, is its own profound reward. He didn't need the acclamation of the Roman populace, or the praise of his generals, to know he was doing right. His inner compass, meticulously guided by philosophy, by the principles of justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance, was enough. His focus was on the action itself and the intention behind it, not the external outcome or the response it might elicit. Similarly, Seneca, in his letters, repeatedly cautioned against the constant clamor of crowds, the fleeting distractions of public life, and the emptiness of chasing superficial fame. He advocated, with passionate conviction, for periods of solitude and introspection as absolutely essential for nurturing the soul, for cultivating inner strength and clarity. Why? Because in those quiet moments, free from the demanding gaze of others, we can truly listen to ourselves, identify our deepest values, clarify our true purpose, and consolidate our inner strength. This is where the true freedom lies, where we connect with our authentic self, unadulterated by the need to conform or impress. This freedom manifests in countless practical ways in everyday life. It's the freedom to make a technical decision at work because it's the objectively best, most robust solution, backed by your expertise and reasoned judgment, not because it will make you popular with management or avoid a difficult conversation. It's the freedom to raise your children in a way you and your partner genuinely believe is best for them, rooted in your values, without constantly looking over your shoulder for the nod of approval from relatives' other parents at the school gate or the latest parenting trends on social media. It's the freedom to pursue a hobby or interest, like deep diving into a niche programming language, mastering a complex woodworking technique, or exploring a forgotten philosophical text, purely for the joy of discovery, mastery, and learning, rather than for an audience, for social currency, or for the bragging rights it might afford. I've felt this liberation firsthand, and it has profoundly changed how I navigate my days. Choosing to decline that optional work social, not out of malice or avoidance, but out of a clear, self-aware choice to recharge and honor my own energy needs, has become a powerful, quiet act of self-validation. The fear of being disliked or missing out still whispers sometimes, of course. It's a deeply ingrained learned habit, not easily unlearned in our social world. But the practice of reminding myself that their opinion is not my task, that my integrity and inner peace are, allows that whisper to fade into the background, to lose its power over my decisions and my emotional state. What I've found is a profound paradox. By consciously caring less about external validation, by releasing that desperate need for approval, you actually become more authentically yourself. You present a clearer, more genuine version of who you are. And in doing so, you often earn a deeper, more sincere respect from the people who truly matter, those who value authenticity, honesty, and depth over superficial charm or performative sociability. When you stop performing, you become real. And realness, it turns out, is its own compelling form of belonging, not to a fleeting group or a fickle trend, but to yourself and to those few precious connections who appreciate that genuine, unvarnished connection. This isn't about becoming a defiant rebel or an isolated, misanthropic figure. It's about being grounded, self-possessed, and living with an internal locus of control. It means that your sense of worth doesn't fluctuate wildly with the latest compliment or critique, but remains steady, rooted firmly in your own reasoned choices, your consistent efforts towards virtue, and your authentic self-expression. That steadiness, that inner quietude, that unshakable foundation, is the very essence of freedom that Kaminsky describes and the Stoics champion throughout history. It's a journey, not a destination, a daily practice of checking in with yourself, of choosing your inner peace over external applause, and of discerning genuine responsibility from mere social pressure. But the moment you start, the moment you consciously decide to unhook your self-worth from the opinions of others, that's when the first real, exhilarating breath of freedom truly begins. Part 10. Summary. And so, the deepest message from the gift of not belonging comes into focus. True freedom begins the moment you stop seeking validation from others. You don't need to force yourself to blend in. You can live fully on your own rhythm, guided by your own values. In our next episode, we'll turn to James Clear's Atomic Habits, a global bestseller that shows how small daily choices can compound into life-changing transformation. It's the perfect follow-up. Once we've released the pressure to belong, the next step is building the habits that shape the life we truly want. If this book resonated with you, consider purchasing the full copy of The Gift of Not Belonging to support the author. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other major booksellers. The full text offers a depth and richness that goes far beyond this summary. And if you found today's reflection meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe to Margin Notes Podcast. Your support is what allows us to keep bringing thoughtful stories and stoic insights to your everyday life.